Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be going into part 2 of my modding tutorial of creating the new species, the Malayan tiger, for Planet Zoo. So in the last episode, we went through doing all of the file work. So we got all the files made, we have the animal in the game now, it's functional, but it still looks exactly like our Bengal tiger. And we want to give this animal a makeover, turn it into our Malayan tiger, and just generally make it into a better tiger, because this is one fat cat. I mean, I get that Frontier's going for a certain art style with this, but holy cow, that is a fat cat. I also have some other critiques, mostly that the body is too short, the head is too big. Yeah, it's just... Okay, it needs some work, which is mainly why I want to do a Malayan tiger, because Malayan tiger is actually a better option for Planet Zoo anyways, because they're more common in, at least in US zoos, than the standard Bengal tiger. So we're gonna hop out of Planet Zoo here, first up, we're gonna grab our new version of the Cobra tools that actually just came out today. We're going to install that. We're going to get that in the plugin installed into Blender. Then I'm going to show you how to export or unpack your animal OVL to be able to get to your model and texture that we're going to use. And then how to import those into Blender. We're going to go through the Blender editing, all the model editing that we're going to do in Blender to basically de-chonkify this cat. Then we'll be exporting it out of Blender back into Planet Zoo. We'll test that, make sure it looks good. Then we'll go into Photoshop and do some of the texture work. I'll show you how I do the texture and also how to work with the marking shader that Frontier uses and how to make this not happen anymore. As you can see here, the stripes have broken on this tiger's back. It's because of it's a random mask that Frontier uses to make sure that every animal with a pattern has a unique pattern. It works well for spotted animals like the snow leopard, the jaguar, the cheetah. That works really well. For the tiger, it doesn't work all that well. So we're actually I'll show you how to get around that. All the Malayan tigers will have exactly the same stripe pattern because I'm not doing 3 of them. I'm only going to do 1. And I swore after I did this cat here, the Amber Leopard, that I was never going to do another heavily marked cat. Well, now I'm actually doing 2 back to back, or kind of simultaneously, with the Malayan tiger here, and then my work in progress Sumatran tiger here. This one is still in progress. The male, however, if I can find him, here we go. As you can see, the stripes don't break over the back, at least over this part. You can see here, this texture is a work in progress, but it already looks so much better than the default, at least in my opinion. So let's get out of Planet Zoo, go grab the Cobra tools, and get that installed into Blender. All right, so your first stop is going to be in the Zoo Sim modding community Discord. If you want to mod Planet Zoo, I highly recommend you join the Discord. Hop in here. This used to just be the Frontier modding Discord, but it's been expanded to include different things like Prehistoric Kingdoms already in here, Planet Coaster modding, Zoo Tycoon modding, JPOG, Mega Aquarium, all that. It's all here. Great group of people, super helpful and friendly. So what you're going to do when you come into the Discord, come into the Cobra Tools Updates channel, find the latest release. It'll usually be the newest post. Go ahead and click on it and we'll go into it. Brings you over to GitHub where you can get it. So our downloads are right down here. You're going to get both the Cobra Tools, and I've already downloaded this more than once today, so I'm not going to re-download it, but download the Cobra tools and download the Blender plugin. There is now a separate Blender plugin, so we're going to go ahead and use that one. From there, once you have those downloaded, we are going to hop into Blender and install the plugin. This will allow Blender to import and export the Cobra models. So open Blender. You want to be running 2.92. Tools used to work well with 2.81. That's not the case anymore. The new hair tools really need 2.92, so make sure you get that. It's a really stable build. I would not recommend using the 2.93 alpha just because the tools are not written for that yet. So go ahead and click on General. We just want a default Blender screen, and we're going to come up here to Edit and go to Preferences, Add-ons. If this isn't already selected, click on Add-ons and then go to Install. And I'm actually going to install the new tools because I needed to do this because this new tool update was released today. So I wanted to make sure that I had the newest and brightest tools. So we're going to grab Blender plugin.zip. It's just the whole zip file. Go ahead and hit Install Add-on. And that should have installed here. Okay, so that actually didn't install, and I know there's a reason why. That's because I need to uninstall my old one, and I forgot I wanted to show you how to do that. So when the new Cobra Tools update comes out, and they come out really frequently because the guys are always working on putting out the new ones, and fixing bugs, adding new features, whatever, you need to uninstall the old one before you install the new one. So what you're going to do, you're going to find your app data folder on your computer. It's going to be under this PC, local disk C, users, your computer name, and then app data, roaming, and then Blender Foundation. If we come into here under 2.92 scripts, you'll find your add-ons folder. If you click on that, it shows you what we have here. I only have one Blender add-on installed right now. It'll always say Cobra Tools Master. Just delete that folder. So now that's gone, I'm ready to reinstall the new add-on for today. So we go ahead and go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, Install, and then we will go back to where I have downloaded the Blender plugin onto my computer. For me, it's just my Downloads folder. Grab the Blender plugin, Install Add-on. There we go. So that's what's supposed to happen. You'll see it's grayed out right now. Go ahead and check the check mark. And now it's activated and ready to go. Now we're going to go ahead and close Blender because we don't need it right now. What we're going to do, I've extracted our the Cobra tools onto my desktop here. I'm going to go ahead and open the ovltool.py. And as you can see, this one looks a little bit different than the one that we used in the last episode because, well, they changed some stuff. They made it a little bit different. The species dat edit is no longer under here. We actually just click the new species hash and then use dat edit. I haven't actually tried that yet, so we'll see how that works. But go to open and then find in your OVL data your new mod here. Our Malayan tiger, go to animals, big cats, M tiger male, and open the OVL. I like to start with the male, it's just my workflow. Now, over here on your desktop, or wherever you would prefer to organize your files, go to New, and then Folder. I'm just going to call it Malayan Tiger. Okay, that's not even close to being spelled right. I don't care. Make 3 folders in here, one for male, one for female, and one for juvenile, because we're going to go through and edit all 3 of them. And go ahead and open the male one. You don't have to open it. But from here, we go back to our Cobra tool and we unpack. So go Edit, Unpack. I just unpack the whole dang thing. And find that new folder that you just created on the desktop. So Malayan Tiger, Male, and then we unpack it into that folder. And as you can see, everything has already popped in. You will get this message that says one file was not extracted. Just hit OK and ignore that. Close the tools because we don't need them anymore. So if I go to View, Large Icons, you can see we have a whole bunch of different files in here. We have animation files, we have texture files. These are the three fur marking files that the random mask, this one here, uses to determine the marking pattern of each cat. We're going to basically disable this one when we get to there, but we're not quite there yet. We want to do our modeling work first. So first up, we're going to go to Blender. We're going to reopen Blender, General, and then delete the default cube. You don't need it. Go File and Import, and right down here you will notice you have these 5 new options down here. We're only going to use one of them, the .mdl2 cobra model. So we're going to hit that, import that, and then we're going to go onto our desktop or wherever you have made your new folder, find that Malayan tiger folder, go into the mail, and there will be only one option to import out of here, and this is our model. So we'll go ahead and import that, give it a second, and there he is. So this is our default male Bengal tiger model. The black sticks that are coming off of it are the rig. These are the bones. We're not going to be messing with the bones. It's not possible right now to actually edit animations. So what we're going to do, we're just going to hide that because we don't need to see them. You'll also notice there are little hairs sticking off of the model. This is a particle system, and we actually need to address the particle system first thing. So we're going to come down here to our vertex groups tab, which is the green triangle, and we're going to click on Gauge UV Scale. All right, so what this did is this tool has pulled the UV scale data of the particle system. I think I don't fully understand this. Hendrix made this and made it work. It makes it so that the hair behaves the same way that the hair behaves in the game. If you'll notice, some early mods, including my Amber Leopard, are kind of spiky. That's because I couldn't get the hair tools to behave correctly. So now let's take a look at this cat and decide what we're going to do to it. We are limited to what I call subtle edits. We can't radically change the proportions of the animal. It has to stay within the general proportions of the rig, otherwise the animations will break and they will break badly. So we take a look at it. We look at it from top view, look at it from front view. You can see this is a very thick cat. This cat needs to go on a diet. This cat needs some cosmetic surgery. We're going to do that here. Now, this is not going to be a tutorial on how to use Blender. Coming into this, you need to have some basic understanding of how the tools work already. You don't have to be an expert in Blender, but you do need to know how to navigate the menus. You need to know how to navigate through the different tabs over here. You need to have an idea of what they do. Materials, textures, vertex groups, particles. You don't necessarily have to know how to manipulate all of these things, but having a general understanding of some of the basic functions in Blender is essential. If this is your first time using Blender, I highly recommend heading over to YouTube, finding some basic Blender tutorials and going through them just to understand the tool better. That will save you a lot of time and headache down the road. So, one more thing I want to do here before we get started messing around with the model, we have to delete out of it. We always want to make sure we're working in LOD 0. So right now all of these are grayed out. You can actually turn these on, and as I turn them on, you'll see different things are kind of happening to the model. We want to make sure we're always editing our LOD 0. We have different groups here. Model 0 is the body. As you can see, it's highlighted in orange. Model 1 is the mouth, claws, pads, and not the eyes, but the eyelids. Model 2 is the eyeballs. We're not going to mess with the eyes much, if at all. Try to avoid messing with the eyes, especially the eye position, because you can break them and weird stuff will happen. Model 3 is the whiskers. And interestingly, our Bengal tiger doesn't have eyebrow whiskers. The newer cats do. And then Model 17, we can't actually really see it right now. Model 17 is our fur fin shell. Going down here, these are our LODs. LODs are level of detail mesh. So if I turn on Model 4 and turn off Model 0, you can see it looks basically the same, right? If I turn off Model 4 and turn on Model 15, and then turn off Model 0, you can see, well, something has happened. What this is, each descending layer of LOD has a decimate modifier applied to it to reduce the number of polygons. And what this is as you zoom in and out, or closer and further away from an animal in the game loads in these different levels of detail to take some strain off of your computer. So if we come into here, our Model 0, and we actually come onto here, our modifier tab here, and apply and add a decimate modifier, it will tell you down here that this model this particular one, Model 0, has a face count of 4,446. We remove that, go down to Model 15, turn that on, and throw a decimate modifier on there. It has a face count of 251, so that's a severe difference. And when you're zoomed far out, you won't see the difference. Your computer will notice the difference, especially if you're on an older or not like really top spec machine. So I'm just going to go ahead and X out of that to get rid of it because I don't need to apply it. We will be doing the LODs later, but first up, I want to get into here. One step we have to do, because otherwise weird things happen with the fur. It's basically, you'll have some very weirdly generated fins on your animal if you don't do this. Remove the UNK0 and residue vertex groups. So here on the vertex group tab, in this menu here with Model 0 selected, I'm just going to hit the minus button to take those away. I'm going to do the same thing on Model 17, on Model 4, on Model 18, 7, 10, 13, and 15. We don't have to worry about removing these groups on 1, 2, or 3 because they don't have a fur particle effect applied to them. Okay, so let's get started here actually editing our model. What I want to do before I do much of anything else is I want to pull up my reference that I have here, and I'll just open a new one. So in my downloads, I have a whole bunch of images of Malayan tigers and Bengal tigers pulled up in here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to find a half decent one. It's kind of a good side view, and I'm just going to drag it. I'll actually put the screen up here. I'm going to drag it into my Blender window and just let go. And then, if I zoom out here, you can see I now have an image of a tiger behind my model. And what you can do, if you come up to these little transform gizmos here, you can scale this down. And then here in the middle, the X in the middle, you can move it. And what I want to do, I'm going to turn on X-ray so I can see the image through the model here, is I want to kind of match the tiger in the image to my tiger model. Now this isn't going to line up exactly because the tiger is in a slightly different position than the T-pose tiger that we have here. But you can see as we do this, we have quite a big difference between the frontier model of the tiger and an actual photograph of tiger. And this is a wild tiger photograph. As you can see, it's a relatively slim animal. The head is not quite so big, the legs are not so thick, and the legs are quite long, which is very typical of a big cat. So we want to kind of match that with our model as best we can within the constraints of what we can do. So what I want to do is move our tiger reference photo over here so I can just kind of see it off to the side. We'll turn X-ray off. And now I'm going to go into sculpting mode and start messing around with the cat. So if we go sculpt, come up here onto this menu here, I find it's a much better, it just opens a better sculpting window here. One thing I want to do before I do anything else though is I want to move this back. So I'm going to pressing G and then X, and it moves it along the X-axis, just kind of gets it back in the 3D space away from our model. But when you hit, I'm using my numpad, my 10 key. 1 is front orthographic, 3 is side orthographic, 7 is top orthographic. We're using these views a lot here. And then 5 switches from perspective to ortho. Okay, so now we come over here, go click on the actual model, make sure that model 0 is selected. It's usually going to be model 0 in a couple of the base game animals. The actual body is like model 1. I think the snow leopard is like that for some weird reason. But come over here and hit sculpt mode to switch into sculpt mode. So as you can see right now, it's automatically selected draw. We're not going to use that. The main tool we're going to be using is grab, and then we're also going to be using smooth. All right, let's get in here. Actually, I want to do one more thing here. I want to move our tiger over just so that I can see him a little bit closer. So let's go back to sculpt mode and kind of get started. So I don't like to start with the head. I like to kind of start with the body. Not going to mess with the tail. I've never had good results messing with the tail. It's rigged. It's weighted very, very heavily to each bone. Minor changes in Blender here can have major, really ugly results in game because of how the animations work. So I'm not going to touch the tail. But before I do anything else, I want to turn on symmetry. So down here, where it says symmetry, click on mirror X. So what will happen, if we come into a front view, you can see there's a yellow dot that indicates where I'm going to be doing something. So if I were to grab a vertex and pull it out, it pulls out on both sides or pushes in on both sides. To undo what I've just done, hit Control Z. All right, so let's come into here and start kind of messing around with our tiger. I'm going to use a very large brush here and start changing the shape of the back just a little bit. I don't want to do too much here, but I want to just alter the outline of this animal just enough to make it more, make it a little bit slimmer and a little bit more tiger-like rather than fat house cat-like. We're going to pull the belly up quite a bit here. We're going to get rid of the zoo cat paunch as much as we can. I know Frontier, they were doing that intentionally because zoo cats do tend to get rather fat. Or if they were just, I'm not sure what they were thinking. And I'm not going to actually speculate. So I actually want to take all this geometry here between the back legs and just kind of push it up. And from this angle too, give him a little bit of a tummy tuck right there. And then what I did there, holding shift, will smooth the model. It actually activates the smooth brush without having to switch off of your current tool. Use that quite a bit. Be careful with smooth. You can undo what you did really easily. So I want to slim down the hip a little bit and just kind of move the hip mesh back just a bit. Can't do too much here because we'll break the rig. We don't want to do that or break the animations. But what I want to try to do is visually at least elongate the body a bit, because our tiger, our default Bengal tiger, has a very short body, and tigers are very long. This is a very long animal in this photo here. We want to kind of replicate that as much as we can. So I want to take the shoulder, push it up a little bit. I'm going to slim these legs down here. Like, this cat has not skipped arm day at all. I'm going to bring the chest in just a little bit. Can't do too much in here because this is a heavily weighted area. But just a little bit, just enough to make it a little bit slimmer. Certain areas you can do more with, like changing ear shape, I've found to be something you can do pretty radically. With my Mexican wolf, I basically took the little tiny short ears of the Arctic wolf and made them those big bad ears on the Mexican wolf. And they mostly work. They turn a little bit weird, but all the wolf ears turn a little bit weird. So that's more of a frontier thing. So I want to continue to kind of slim this cat up a little bit here. Gonna hold shift to kind of smooth what I've done. Make the brush smaller with the bracket keys, so same hotkey as in Photoshop to make brush larger or smaller. Come into the front view here. I'm going to bring the chest up a little bit because what we've done here needs to now match the front. Smooth it a bit. Bring it up. And then I'm going to work on the neck. Just a little bit. I had that brush a little bit too big there. I'm going to bring all of this mesh up here. I'm going to smooth it so it'll all look kind of decent. Move the model around in the 3D space. Look at it from all different angles. Now I want to kind of mess around with, oh, good Lord. So, yeah, so this is why you make sure that you kind of turn the model around, look at it from different sides as you're doing things. Because you can do stuff like this. Like, all right, well, let's pull this back out because he does need some cheeks. It's one thing that's really characteristic of a tiger. I'm going to pop back into object mode here because I want to grab another one of my images of a really good face here. Wow, that's huge. Very, very good face reference. So let's scale that kind of down toward the size of our animal. Turn on X-ray so I can see through it. I basically want to match up the ears as much as possible, or actually maybe the eye mesh if I can even see it. Okay, so that's almost perfect. Okay, so I just want to get this lined up just about as well as I can here because I want to actually try to kind of match this a little bit because this is a fantastic tiger portrait. So I'm going to turn off X-ray and I'm going to hop back into sculpt mode here. Is it quite lined up? I don't think I'm quite lined up here. So actually, I'm not sure that this is totally going to work. So what I'm going to do is just kind of put it off to the side. It's easier to kind of match things up when you're at a different stage here. But what I want to do is kind of get the same silhouette here of the head. So I want to bring the cheeks in as much as I can, gently, very gently, carefully. I'm going to bring the ears down and bring them in just a bit. I'm going to shorten them up because they're kind of cartoony at this point. I want there to be actual definition between the ears and where the head joins. And then this part right here is too far forward. As you can see, the tiger has a very long muzzle. This is a tigers and other pantherines. They're a long-muzzled cat or long-faced cat rather than a short-faced cat like a mountain lion. So I want to kind of accentuate that by just gently moving this mesh back here. What I don't want to do is let it break here at the jaw though. So you can see we have two different objects. We're only editing one at the moment. So I'm going to come back and just fill that hole. So already we're starting to get a little bit more of a tiger head shape. Push that back a little bit more. Bring those cheeks down a little bit. We'll increase the fur length on here, but some of this has to be done with mesh. Using just the fur shader to make long hair doesn't look really great in Planet Zoo. Okay, so that's a better face shape here. I want to get a different reference photo for the head though. We have a very good one right here of this tiger in profile. So I'm just going to scale this way down right to the size of the head. We'll turn on X-ray for this. Now because this photograph has the head at a slightly different angle, I'm just going to rotate it so that it matches our model. And I'm just going to try to line up the nose and the eyes as much as possible here. And I'm going to rotate it just a little bit more. Hotkey for that is R. And as you can see, it's rotating on a point that's somewhere off of the screen, which is a little bit of a pain. Not too bad. Okay, let's see here. So what I want to line up to is the eye as close as possible, because the eye is something we're not going to be moving. Everything else we can kind of move around a little bit. Like I said, we have to do really subtle edits so that the animations on the jaw and everything don't break. But so we're pretty close to lined up here. So I'm going to go a little bit more like that. Okay. Now we will go back into our sculpt mode. And I'm going to move the mesh around just a bit to kind of match up to our tiger here, our tiger photograph. Going to go very carefully. We won't make it match exactly because I don't think we can do that with the constraints of the rig. Ideally, we do a whole new rig here, but that's probably not going to be possible. Now, I'd like to make the whole face longer, but I'm not sure that's something that would be a good idea here. So I'm just going to go like this. Turn off our x-rays so that I can see the full model here. It's already starting to look a lot better. I'm gonna slim up the jaw a little bit here, make sure we don't break that. We have some kind of jagged geometry here, so I'm just gonna smooth that with the smooth tool. Again, just hold shift. And we'll pull that down. Now this is the male model, so the male can have a heavier skull. The female will be a lot lighter. I'm going to move the shoulder, the hump of the shoulders back just a little bit. Shouldn't break anything too much, I hope. Yeah, I'd really like to make that face longer. And kind of pull up the ear just a little bit to kind of give it more definition. Move the whole thing just very slightly back. Gives it that little bit longer head look. So again, really subtle edits. Now, we still have all of this to deal with, which is the really... Well, this cat is fluffy and not in a really good way. So I'm just going to start pulling mesh in. And I'm going to go kind of extreme here. Smooth it a little bit as I go. Not too much, because again, it can break stuff. It can undo a whole bunch of work that you did. I'm going to pull in the rib cage here. I'm going to pull in the shoulders. I'm going to pull in the arms a little bit. That bit of mesh right there. Check. Kind of smooth around. Sure that it's still looking good. I use a big brush with a large area of influence because I want to move a lot of mesh at once. Pull in the ribs a bit. Don't accidentally move the feet or the toes though, because these are again a heavily weighted, very tightly rigged area. We don't want to mess with that too much. While we're at it, can we talk about how bad these toes are? It's like This cat has fingers. And it has a very weird dew claw that almost touches the ground. So back to what I was doing though. I'd love to do just like a brand new sculpt for this, but then I'd end up doing that for every single animal, I think. Because I mean, they're good. They're just not exactly what I want to see. But that's the great thing about modding, is now I can make it exactly what I want to see. I'm gonna zoom in, make sure I don't grab the wrong mesh. If you do accidentally grab something like, oops, I've pulled a toe out, that would be bad. Just Control Z and put it back. Just gonna get these kind of out of the way here. Go back to sculpt mode. There we go. All right. So it's starting to look a lot better. Still not thrilled with the back leg. There's just not enough definition here. It's not too bad. Again, another area that we can't do a whole lot to because it'll mess up the animations if we do. Okay, so that looks a lot better. That looks like a much more reasonable tiger. So I'm going to come into our object mode and I'm going to mess with some of the weight painting for the fur really quick. Now before I do that, before I change the weight painting, we're going to hit this V-Col to hair. It's going to turn our vertex colors to hair, hopefully. Okay, it worked. Excellent. Like I said, I haven't had great success with the hair shader tools before, but this new update, it seems to all be working. So we're going to go to where it says object mode, go to weight paint. Now the model has turned a funky color. We are on the fur width vertex group. Apparently that changes the noise or the density of the fur. I'm not 100% sure on that. I haven't messed with it much and I'm kind of afraid to. I think I just need to make like save off a separate copy of a mod and mess with that and experiment with it. What we want is fur length. So again, this controls the length of the fur on the model. Areas that are dark blue have almost no weight or no weight at all. Areas that are green, yellow, or red have heavier weight. So our weight paint tools are under the tool and workspace settings. It looks like a screwdriver and a wrench. You'll click on that. It's also going to be the top tab. I'm going to change this to add, and then I'm going to turn the strength all the way down, almost all the way down, and I'm going to turn the weight almost all the way down. Don't make extreme changes to weight painting, whether you're reweighting a bone, whether you're messing with the fur length. Extreme changes in weight cause extreme problems in game. So I'm just going to paint very gently, just with the mouse over. Always check symmetry and make sure it's mirrored onto the X. So I'm actually editing both sides of the model at the same time. And the changes will be very subtle here in Blender. You might be able to see that the individual hairs are getting just a tad bit longer as this green is getting brighter on the neck. Because this is a male, I do want him to have a little bit of a mane, just a little bit of that tiger ruff that they do get. That's probably pretty good. I don't want to do anything more extreme than that. However, I want the hair to be shorter across the back because I think they're too fluffy. Bengal tigers Malayan tigers, tropical tigers shouldn't be all that fluffy. So I'm going to change my tool to subtract, and I'm going to turn the weight up just a bit and the strength up just a touch. Not a lot, but just a little bit. And then these areas that are very, very bright green, I'm just going to paint them lightly. Again, lightly is the key here to have less weight. So I'll leave that little bit there on the rough. The top of the tail I want to unweight. Not entirely. Don't want to unweight it too much. Just a bit here so that it is a little bit less in places. Okay, I think that's the weight painting that I'm going to do here. So let's go back to object mode. Now, let's see, is there any other changes that I want to make to the tiger before we test it? So it looks pretty good so far. We haven't messed with Model 1, we haven't messed with Model 2, we haven't messed with Model 3. So we come back onto Model 0, go back to our vertex groups, come back down here to our Cobra Mesh tools. We're going to go hair to V-Col. What that's going to do is it's going to swap the hair, or the vertex color, the hair that we created back to vertex colors. I'm going to do that. Actually, I think I missed a step right there. So I'm just going to go back. I'm going to go V-Col back to hair. Because what I want to do is comb this animal. We're going to groom it like it's a show dog. So what I've done now is I've switched into particle edit, and what we are editing is the hair particle. And the tools for that, again, are under your active workspace tools here. You can turn your radius up here. Unfortunately, bracket keys don't work on this particular tool. So I'm going to turn it up a bit. And now I'm just going to comb this thing. And now you can see the hair is laying down along the body. So I'm going to comb it in side view ortho. I'm going to comb the face, push all the hair back, push it down, kind of get it to lay along the body the way that we want it to. Pull it down a little bit, down a little bit. Starting to look really good. Now, I'm going to go into front ortho. And we're going to deal with this. As you can see, it automatically mirrors left and right, which is fantastic. So kind of think about, look at your reference, look at how the hair lays. So the hair lays up in this section, it lays out in this section. The rough is very kind of out this way. For the ears, we kind of want the ear hair to lay down like this. The top of the head to be kind of like that. This can lay more like this. The stuff on the bridge of the nose needs to go straight up. And you can get really obsessive in here with your hair combing, making it look really good. Now I'm going to zoom out a little bit and take a look. So what I want to do with the inside of the legs is just comb it down and kind of comb it out. Look at it from the top. Just make sure everything's looking the way that I want and stuff isn't sticking out weirdly. Go. Alright, our tiger is combed. Yeah, mostly. Gonna fix some stuff here and there. Now we go back to object mode, go back to our vertex group. Now we go hair to V-Col. And that has just calculated what we've done, and now you can see the little hairs that stick off the model actually lay in the direction that we painted them, or that we combed them. Now, the last step here is to create fins. So go ahead and click on Create Fins. You'll get a message down here, Generated Fin Geometry. And now these two are selected. So now we can actually kind of almost see our fur shell model. And what that has done is that's taken this fur shell and made it fit the altered geometry that we've created. Now, we're going to make LODs. We're only going to make LODs for the model that we altered. So we only altered model 0 here, so we won't have to touch these other ones. So I'm going to turn on model 4. I'm going to come into, make sure you're in the viewport window here and press Shift D to duplicate the model. Now, right now it's attached to the mouse. We don't want to move this around though, so right click. We now have a duplicate of our model. Take this, drag it down here to LOD 1. Now, next step, select model 4. Make sure it's visible over here. Come into edit mode. Delete all of these vertices. So press delete, this menu pops up, vertices. Now you can see the model 4 object still remains. So come into object mode, clicking on model 4, holding shift, clicking on model 0.001 to select that. Make sure your cursor is in your active viewport window and press Ctrl J. As you can see, those two objects have now been joined. Model 4, it's kept the name Model 4. It's also kept the vertex group information and all the modifier information. If we go into edit mode, we can see that our mesh has now been transferred over from Model 0 into Model 4. We're going to do that for each layer of LOD. So we'll turn on Model 7, Shift D, drag it down to LOD 2, select Model 7, go to Edit Mode, delete, go back to Object Mode, hold Shift, select that, Control J, and so on and so forth all the way down. Now, I'm not going to do all of the LODs just yet because I don't know if these edits that I've done are actually going to work yet. I'm going to go ahead and export this into Planet Zoo and take a look. So I'm just going to click on LOD 0 all the way down to the joint here. This is our rig. Hold Shift to select the entire thing. Go File, Export, and then down here at the bottom, Cobra Model. It'll pop up a dialog box. Go to wherever you saved your export. For me, it's on my desktop because that's where I save everything. Find the mail folder that we created. Click on mtigermail.mdl2. What that does is it copies the name down here. Don't worry, we're not going to replace that one. It's actually going to make what Blender's going to do is make a new folder in this folder that says export, and that's where your exported model will live. So hit export. And if we've done everything right, it won't kick any errors. This may take a second. There it has one UV layer, but two were expected. Okay. Okay, that's fun. UV maps. Oh, that's fun. Okay. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so I did something wrong in creating the LODs. So what I'm going to do is actually hit undo a few times and see if I can undo what I did. I did the LODs incorrectly on this. Let's see if we can go all the way back to 4. Oh, the power of undo. You'll notice I haven't actually saved this yet. There's a reason. Okay, so we're back to with our mesh here. So I'm going to do this a slightly different way. So the technically correct way is to delete the old mesh before you make the group. For some reason that doesn't seem to want to be working here. Alright, so I'm just going to take model 4, I'm going to make sure that it is selected in edit mode. I'm going to come into object mode. I'm going to hold shift. So what I'm going to do is take a look at our data down here and make sure that this copies correctly. So model 4 has one UV map. I'm going to hold shift, Control J. Going to go back into edit mode. And I'm now going to delete this. Yeah, it didn't work. Awesome. I love making mods. This will happen a lot. Like a lot. So just going to delete that and we're going to start again. Going to Shift D. Edit mode, that's unselected. Okay. Edit mode, that is selected. Drag that down. And Control J. Okay, that worked. I don't know why the other one didn't work, but now you can see we actually have two models overlaid on top of each other. One is selected, the other is not. We're just going to delete the top one. Okay, and I've turned off model 0, so I know that we actually have mesh in this model. Okay, so that worked. And we'll go back to object mode. All right, we're going to Shift D, drag it down to LOD 2. To make sure that the Model 7 mesh is selected in edit mode and that the Model 0 mesh is not selected. Okay. I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to click first on Model 7, hold shift, then click on Model 0. Control J. Okay. And as you can see down here, it kept its UV maps. So this one worked correctly. We go edit mode, delete the old mesh, and we're good. Not going to go any further than that just because I want to get this into the game and make sure that it works. And we'll go back to object mode. Always go back to object mode when you're selecting a different object or different model. Now we're going to try to export this again. I'm actually glad that this happened because this part can just be a pain and you need to know how to work through it. So we'll go export, cobra model. Now that we've already selected our destination once, it'll always pop up for it. So mtiger and export. Cross our fingers that it doesn't kick an error. Okay, okay, we're good. We're good. It worked. Yay. All right, back to the desktop. Cobra tools. Open our mail OVL. Go into here. Now this folder that we made now has a new folder in it called export. This is where Blender has placed our exported model. And you have your MDL2 and your MS2. We're only going to take the MDL2 and drag it in. Now that we've done that, you can see it did some stuff over here. It says done, didn't kick any errors, we're good. We're going to save it. Make sure that you're saving the correct one. Hit save, close the tools, launch the game. It really helps if you have a computer that's powerful enough to run Planet Zoo and Blender at the same time. Ideally, you don't want to have to close Blender, reopen it every time you have to test something in game. Same with Photoshop. I'm lucky enough I can have all three running at the same time. My computer's not really happy about that, and I wouldn't like try to load into some sort of crazy big frame rate killing built up zoo, but just into the mod test zoo that I use, it works fine. All right, we're gonna get into the game here and take a look, and we should see our edited Malayan tiger. And I'm pretty sure I see him right here because I see some weird stuff with his lod right there. Yeah, that's definitely him. Okay, so if we look at him in game, you can see he's got a better face, he's much slimmer, and he's got a better silhouette. Now, because we didn't do the full LODs though, what happens when we zoom out is we click off of him, you should see that he gets fat again, basically. But we did do 2 LOD levels, so it's not as noticeable. As you can see, the fur is nice and laid back along the body. Here on the cheeks, it's a little bit longer. It's all combed in the direction that we wanted it to be. It looks really nice. In contrast, are you one of the spiky ones? This is one of the spiky ones. You can see on this older Amur leopard, if you zoom in really close to the fur, it actually points the wrong direction. And if you look at the ears, they're totally spiky and ragged looking. On this one, he's nice and smooth and pretty, like a little tropical tiger should be. So if we unpause it, let him move around a little bit, we can see the animations haven't broken. He has a much better silhouette. And we've got a little bit of a break right there in the chest. I don't know if that's too noticeable. I want to deal with it or not. Yeah, they said that the 1.51 update fixed some of the weirdness with the climbing. It didn't fix the weirdness with the climbing. Oh my, they're still very broken when it comes to climbing. But here's a good comparison here. We have, I believe this will be our female. Nope, this is a male Bengal tiger. Perfect. We have our male vanilla Bengal tiger here with our edited Malayan tiger next to it. So much more realistic looking tiger. And much happier about that. So what I'm going to do is pop back into Blender, mess with this model just a touch more, and then do the rest of the LODs and do the final export, because this is pretty good. It's not, this one isn't going to require really extreme changes to the model, so that's gonna be good. Man, some of the new climbing animations look really weird on the big cats. All right, let's get out of here. So this is starting to look really good. I actually want to touch up just a bit here on the chest and kind of pull that out because it didn't like my edits right here. So we'll just smooth that just a touch. I might, I don't know, that's a heavy weighted area. I don't know if I want to mess with that too much. If for some reason you do need to re-weight a bone, you can do that here in the weight paint. You just find whatever bone is influencing that section of mesh and change it a little bit. So for example, DEF muzzle joint L weights the left side of the muzzle here, and then the right side. Be careful changing bone weights. You can break stuff. you can break stuff badly. These have pretty small, pretty detailed weights, such as we have the lower eyelid, we have the upper eyelid, very, very detailed. So you can do a lot, but you can break a lot in here too. All right, so at this point, I like what's going on, and I'm going to go ahead and save it. I'm going to do a save as, and then in my same folder for the Malayan tiger, I'm just going to go ahead and, if I can find it, there it is. We're just going to call this Malayan underscore tiger underscore male as our Blender file. So that way, if I need to come back to it, I won't have to always just re-export it out of the game or re-import it into Blender. I can just pop that open and use it. So everything looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with the weight painting, with the combing on the fur. So I've made that little bit of a change to the chest. So I'm going to go ahead and do all of the LODs now. So again, we're going to select this one. I'll leave those in there. Shift D, drag it down to model 4. I do want to change model 4 just because I made that little bit of an edit to the chest. Go into edit mode. I want to press A to select the whole thing. So I want to make sure that that's selected. Click on model 4, hold shift, click on model 0, our duplicate of model 0. Control J to join them. All right, so that worked. We will do the next one. So Shift D, go down to model 7. Go into edit mode, press A to make sure it's selected. Then click on it, hold shift, click on the duplicated model, Control J. Make sure your cursor is in the viewport window, Control J, there we go. And it kept our UV maps. So we'll do the same thing. Wait. I hope I didn't mess this up. I think I forgot to come back into... Okay, no, that one looks fine. Was it 7? Okay, so I have to redo 7 because I messed that up right there. Forgot to come in and delete that mesh. So we'll go Control J, edit mode, there we go, delete the old mesh. And then go back to object mode. You can also press tab to move between object and edit mode. Shift D. Again, it's tied to the mouse right now. Right click to put it back where it was. Don't move your LOD mesh, otherwise weird things will happen in the game. Bring that down to model 10, turn on model 10 so that I can see it. Make sure we have it selected in edit mode. Hold shift, Control J, go back into edit mode, delete the old mesh. So it kept the data from the old model 10 and just added the new mesh into it. So that's what we want it to do. Oh, we're in edit mode, that's why. If for some reason it's not letting you do what you want, it's not letting you select the model that you're trying to, you're probably in a mode other than object mode. Just go back to object mode and it'll behave again. Blender has some little idiosyncrasies like this. So we did model 10, we're coming down to model 13. Control J. And then edit mode, delete the old mesh. Object mode. One more level here. Down to 15. And then hold Shift, select it, Control J. All right, and then we delete the old mesh. Now we're going to add our Decimate modifier. We're going to go back to Object Mode because we always add modifiers in Object Mode. Go to Add Modifier and click on Decimate. Now, our ratio is what decides how many faces we have. So, face count right now, 7,400. I'm going to take our ratio, bring it all the way down to something like that, 407. That's pretty good. Hit Apply. Come back to Model 13, Decimate. We're going to go a little bit less this time. Going to undo that because I was on the wrong mesh. So make sure you have the right one selected. We want to have Model 13 selected, then add the modifier. I'm going to bring that down to about there. And then apply it. Next up is Model 10. Decimate. Go down about halfway for that one. Apply it. Turn that model off. Model 7. Decimate. About to right there. And then apply that. Turn that off, and then Model 4. And bring that down a bit. And we apply that one. Okay, so that one is just about done here. Okay, so now we are done with the model. So I'm just going to select the whole thing, go to Export. I'm going to save it first, just in case. Occasionally it'll crash on export. And then Export. And now we are, okay, we are not done with Blender. I'm incorrect on that. I was going to say we're done with Blender. We're not done with Blender. We're going to do one more thing in Blender to get ready to do the textures. So we're open. First, I just want to inject our model and make sure that it works. And save it. And very quickly just want to test it. Make sure that I haven't broken anything before I go on to the next step. And we'll take a look at this. I also want to make sure that I haven't broken any of my LODs. Okay, I need to figure out what is going on with that level in. Okay, that was weird. Why did it do that? Why did it just kind of. Was that an animation issue or was that a LOD issue? Okay, so the LODs look fine. I want to zoom out really far, make sure none of them like blow up or the mesh pulls apart or some weird thing happens. Wish I could scale up the size of the feet. The feet are too small. That's half the problem with the model. The front feet are smaller than the back feet. Okay, but he looks good. LODs seem to be functional. We haven't accidentally cursed the model in any way. Does have that weird animation jerk to it. What is doing that? So I'm gonna... Okay. That is not an issue with the mod. That is an issue with the funky climbing animations. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to investigate what is going on with those weird lines that are just randomly appearing. And then come back in and do the next, yeah, there it is. Take a screenshot of that. Oh, I see what it is. Ah, like creating fins didn't fully apply for some reason. Okay, so that's a quick fix. Let's go back into Blender. This is why I haven't closed it yet. So I want to be on, I'm actually going to be on model 4 when I do this. And we're going to create fins again. Because it seems to pull the model 4 data for the fins. I want to come into here, make sure we don't have any of those. Okay, and now I'm going to re-export this. This is a process of exporting and re-exporting and tweaking and just making small changes, checking them out, going back in, doing all that. So I'm going to work on figuring out why that weird fin thing was happening. We'll come back when we are ready to take the next step, which will be to projection map a brand new stripe pattern for this tiger. And we'll be doing that here in Blender. Alright, so now that I'm relatively happy with the model edits that I've made, we're going to go into our texture paint and we're going to projection map a brand new stripe pattern for this cat. So to do that, come up to your top menu here and go to texture paint. And what that does is it automatically changes your viewport into two different windows. One has your texture on one side and the other has your model on the other side. And as you can see, it has automatically selected a texture layer, which is one of the the marking layers, which is fine. I don't mind that. And you can see it automatically puts it on the model as well. Now this is a reverse, so it's an inverse of the actual stripe pattern, which is honestly this would be better. So to get started here, we're going to come over here, we're going to make a new material and I'm going to make a new texture layer. What I'm going to do is projection map the new texture, and by clicking on the viewport shading, I bring it into fully rendered here, so we can see this is our Malayan tiger with the Bengal tiger texture applied to it. But I want to make a brand new one. So what we're going to do, we're going to select a new texture file or a new image file to work with. I've downloaded several Malayan tiger photos that I'm going to use to projection map the new stripe pattern. So I'm going to come into downloads and find the one that I wanted to use. For some reason, it always sorts it by alphabetical, which is kind of annoying. At least in Blender. I'll just scroll down until I find it. That's not the one, that's a Sumatran tiger. And actually we'll just go ahead and use this one. Before I do that though, before I get started here, I'm going to go ahead and delete these photos here because I don't need them anymore. Just want to get them out of the way. And then we'll go back to texture paint mode. Now coming up here to the top menu, if I move this over a little bit using the middle mouse button to scroll this menu, come into texture, and where it says tiled, swap that to stencil. And now you can see I have a semi-transparent photograph here in the background. Now it looks kind of weirdly compressed. When that happens, back up to texture and hit image aspect. Now it looks right. So to move the picture around, hold the right mouse button, hold shift and right mouse button to zoom it or scale it, and control right mouse button to rotate it. To set the rotation back to 0, just come up to texture, angle, and type in 0 and press enter. So I want to start with this very nice tiger image as our first projection map here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to try to line this up as best I can. Now it's not going to be exact because again our tiger model isn't perfect and the proportions are slightly off. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to line up certain areas. So for this tiger photo, I want to use mostly the side, shoulder, and back of it. So I'm going to line that up with my model the best I can. I'm not going to worry about the head position because I'm not going to use that part. I'm going to rotate it just slightly so that the spine is level. Scale it down. Move it, just gently edit the position until I get it somewhere that I kind of like it. Now to projection map, once we're in stencil mode with this new texture, you just paint it with your mouse. You can use your graphics tablet as well if you have it. Now you can see as I do that, over here on this side, the texture begins to appear. I don't really care which texture file I happen to be working on because I'm just going to save a new one as soon as I'm done. So I'm just going to come in through here, get all of this projected, get the shoulder here. Now I'm going to line up this front leg. Do I want to use that front leg? Let's see. Yeah, there we go. So we'll paint in our front leg here. Rotate it back. Now I want to get the neck as much as possible. So we're getting a really good projection on this. And then for the back leg, do I want to rotate it that much? Actually, I don't want to rotate it that much. So for that back leg, I'm just going to grab a different image. So go back to my downloads here, and as you see, I just have an absolute ton of stuff downloaded because I never clean out my downloads folder ever. And I'm going to find, hopefully, another of my Malayan tigers. Maybe. I'm looking for one that has the back leg in a similar position to the model. I'm not quite seeing that, so I might have to rotate it around a little bit. We'll grab this one. Yeah, that one's not gonna work. No, that one won't work. Okay, we'll find something else. That one will do. Yeah, that one will do. And as you can see, the image is kind of weirdly compressed, so just hit image aspect again to make it not be so weird. Now this one is going to be slightly pain to use because it's at a little bit different angle. I'm just going to zoom my model in here. that going to be suitable at all? This is the kind of tricky part, is just going through finding images that will work and then blending them together in a way that it will look like it came from one single animal. Okay, well this is a Sumatran tiger, but it'll work fine. Image aspect. Yeah, that'll work. So it's in roughly the same position, at least for the top of the hip. So that will work. Scale it up just a little bit. Get it to line up pretty well. Alright, that should do. Now, as you can see, what's happening right here is where the two textures meet, things are looking slightly off. Not going to worry too much about that. Worry about it a little bit, but a lot of this is going to be coming into Photoshop and very carefully editing these together to get rid of these weird areas where the different photographs, the different projections map into each other. Okay, so that's starting to look pretty decent. I want to get at least one more one. I have a really good one for the face, and I want to make sure I get the stripe pattern on the face to look really, really good. Assuming I can find it here. There it is. Okay. All right, so this is that same photograph that we used with the when we were modeling the face. So I want to just kind of line it up. I'm going to try to get the eyes to line up as much as possible here. Okay, so that's pretty close. So I think that's going to do for this. Now, this projection painting, it always defaults to symmetry on the on the x-axis being enabled. I'm actually going to disable that for this part, because what can happen is if you accidentally cross the x-axis while painting on one side and then cross over and start painting on the other side, what'll happen is the two sides, if they're not exactly the same, and they won't be for an animal, you start getting these like weird Rorschach test shapes on the head, and it's just a pain to try and fix that in Photoshop. So instead, I'm going to let each side kind of be unique, and I just want to get this really good texture paint here, or this really good project for the face, and you can see how good that's starting to look. So I'm just going to paint that out. Might as well get the hair texture in the inner ear. If it picks up a little bit of the background, I don't worry about that too much. Just kind of ignore that. We'll fix that later. Let's see, is there any of the stripe pattern that's going to be useful here? Doesn't look like it. So, and then what's happened right here, you can see is I've accidentally gotten part of this paint, this projection accidentally mapped onto the shoulder area. So I want to fix that. So I'm going to grab that first photograph that I was working with. Let's see, where is it? That's not it. There it is. I want to get this first photograph again. Gonna get it back to where it was, line it up, try and get the size to match as closely as possible here. And then we'll go ahead and paint that again. And we'll just kind of re-project this whole neck area, just kind of gently. I'm going to turn the symmetry back on because I want to do both sides at once here. Okay, so that looks really good right there. I like that. Now we have some areas where our projection painting isn't hitting. So here in the chest, the inside of the legs, and this part of the spine right here. If I go into my top ortho, you can see the spine area is still a little bit messed up. I'm going to try to fix that. This isn't always successful. I found this is a part that I just pretty much always have to fix in Photoshop, but I want to give it a go. Got a very nice pattern here, if I can find it. There it is. And this is an actual tiger's skin. And then image aspect to get rid of that weird, whatever that is. Now, the tiger stripes always kind of angle toward the back of the body a little bit, so what I need to do is rotate this around. So I'm just going to rotate it 180 degrees. And there we go, that flipped it around. So I want to line this up as carefully as possible to where I think this texture will fit. I'm going to make my brush smaller and I'm going to come in very carefully into here and see if this is even going to work at all. Not really. Not liking that a bit. Can I line up the stripes a bit? Yeah, actually, I can kind of line up the stripes a bit. Okay, I think having some projection mapping here is better than having none. So again, you can see what's happening because I have the symmetry on the x-axis turned on. Weird stuff is starting to happen when I accidentally cross over the x-axis, so I'm just going to turn it off. And this is a spot where you can use your graphics tablet again. I'm actually just using my mouse right now because I'm lazy. It's sort of working, I guess. And there's going to be a lot of fixing this part of the back in Photoshop. There always is with this type of projection painting, because you're always going to have areas where the model starts to turn, but the texture doesn't. And on the cats, I've noticed it's usually right here along where the side comes into the back, that the texture will start to stretch weirdly. So that's just an area you pretty much have to come in and fix. Let's see if I have one for the front of him. Will that work? Reset our rotation. Image aspect. That's not too bad. So again, I want to just kind of line it up. It's not going to be perfect. I might swap into, does Ortho work better? Or does, huh. I think that'll work. So roughly, the model at roughly the same angle that the image is at, and just kind of lightly paint it, and that's actually not too terrible. We'll paint the inside of that leg a little bit, just because I want to get some detail in there. Yeah, it's not too bad. And I'm not too worried that there's more fur texture on this photograph than there was on the other one that we were using, or that this is a significantly brighter color than the rest of this, because I'm just getting the stripe pattern right now. So I want to do that again, actually with symmetry turned on, and then get this part, so that way I can get both sides of the texture over here. Alright, so that works pretty well. Then we'll do the inside of this back leg. Kind of rotate the texture to match the model, sort of, as much as possible, at least. And this is a really rough projection mapping. This is not anywhere close to the finished product here. I just want to get some sort of stripe pattern that I can then work with. So that's not too bad. There's obviously a lot that has to be done in here, in these areas for the tail. The tail I find is a pain in the butt to get to map correctly. So let's see if we have a different one that has the tail kind of stretched out. Don't think that I have one. Fortunately, just because of the way that tigers usually carry their tails, they kind of carry it in that kind of bell shape. Yeah, it doesn't look like I have any. Oh, there's one. Will that even work, though? Not really. It kind of goes off the screen and into the bushes. I can mess with the tail separately in Photoshop, I think. So, we have our extremely rough projection map over here. There's all sorts of grass artifacts and just weird stuff, and it kind of looks terrible right now. That's fine. I'm going to go ahead and save this. So go to Image and then Save As, and then it wants to name it whatever this is, because that's the one it projected onto. I'm just going to name it, we'll call it Malayan Tiger Male, and projection. And that has now saved it. Now, really quickly, I just want to like throw this in. No, I'm not going to throw that in the game and see what it looks like quite yet. We'll do that in just a second though. So this is done here. I'm going to save that. All right, so here we are in Photoshop. So what I've done is I've opened my Malayan tiger. It's the fur.p3 marking scar texture 00. This is the one that I usually work from when I'm doing a new marking pattern for one of the animals. You can put the markings just on the standard kind of orange texture layer. This one, in this case, actually go ahead and open this one as well because I'm going to edit it a bit. You could just paint the markings directly on here if you wanted to. I prefer to actually utilize this marking mask that is built into the game. Now, this is an inverted image. So the areas that are bright white will show up as pure black in game. Areas that are black will show up as transparent in game. So it will let, this will be overlaid on this, where it's black here, this orange base color will show through. So what I'm going to do here is I want to get my projection map into this file. So I'm just going to go File and then Place Embedded. I'm going to scroll down and find that projection map. There it is. And Place. So because we did our projection map onto an existing game texture, what has happened is it is now the correct size. And because we used one of these marking texture layers, it automatically set itself to grayscale, which is very, very nice. So what I'm going to do, first hit enter to accept the placement, and then I'm going to go layer and rasterize. And then rasterize layer. I'm going to make myself a couple of copies of that layer, pressing Control J to do that. And now I want to invert this. So image, adjustments, and invert. So now what has happened is our image is now inverted. So I'm working in Adobe Photoshop. I'm using the latest edition of the Creative Suite. You do not have to use Photoshop for this. You can use a graphics program of your choice. There's several free ones, GIMP, and a couple of others. It needs to be pixel based, so don't try to use like Inkscape or Illustrator or something like that. It won't work for you. It needs to also have layer functionality, and ideally it should play nicely with your graphics tablet. Okay, I don't really like that. Okay, so I'm actually just going to mess with this a little bit and see if I can get it to... It wants to take out those stripes no matter what I do. Huh. Okay, I'm actually probably just going to have to paint out this background by hand then, which is going to be fun. I really would rather not do that. Yeah, that takes out too much of the stripe detail. Alright, well, that happens. It's really just a process of figuring out what's going to work for your particular texture. So what I'm going to do to start off, I'm going to go brightness and bring that up because I want to try to eliminate as much of this gray color as possible. You can create interesting effects using these. It's basically an alpha mask. Black will show up as transparent, white will show up as black, and shades of gray will give various different levels of shading in game. So I don't want to pull it up too far. If I pull it up all the way, it starts to blow out, and you can see I start to lose stripe detail in here, so I don't want that to happen. What I want to do is pull it down to about there, and then maybe bring up the contrast just to sharpen it up. Again, if I pull it up all the way, it kind of starts to lose detail. So somewhere in there is pretty good. I want to not lose all this really fine detail on the face. So hit OK on that, and then I'm going to go image adjustments and invert. All right, so that has now inverted our tiger. And ideally, what I would want to do is be able to just use fill bucket, maybe make another layer, copy that layer, and try to do that, but it's taking out our stripes as well. So, all right, just gonna paint this out by hand then. Oh, that's gonna be fun. So I'm actually just on my eraser tool. I've got my stylus pen. I've got my brush set to the hard round pressure size, full opacity, and just quick and dirty, gonna get rid of this white background. And there's probably a better way to do this, and some of you in the comments may actually know this, and you may actually be screaming at your screen right now that there's a much easier way to do this. If there is, hey, let me know. I'm an amateur at this. I always like to learn new and better ways to work with these texture files, to work in Photoshop. I actually don't want to take out that texture up there. Let's zoom this in a little bit. What I don't want to do is accidentally obliterate something that I worked hard to get correctly in Blender here in Photoshop. There we go. Wondering why that was doing weird stuff right there. So again, quick and dirty edits to start, and then we will refine from there. It's the same way I did the the databases. I'll come into here around the face. I'm going to be really careful because I don't want to lose too much of this good detail in here. And a lot of this in here will have to be fixed by hand. But for now, I just want to preserve as much of the original projection paint as I can. Because what I'm going to do after I get all of this white painted out, I'm immediately going to export this, pop this into the game, and see what it looks like. Because I don't want to go too far and spend way too much time only to realize, it looks like crap, I can start over. And with the Amber Leopard, oh, I redid this projection mapping, probably about 5 times before I got it to where it was suitable. The tigers seem to be much easier. The Sumatran tiger is pretty close to done. I have some more on the face to do. to get that looking really ship-shape. But it is, actually, hopefully I'll be able to release it pretty soon here. And then the Malayan tiger will be coming on its heels. The tail we didn't projection map, so what happened when I inverted the whole file is it inverted that part of the tail, so I just erasing this part of this layer, putting it back the way it was. The paws didn't map well, so I'm just going to erase them completely. I won't be needing that at all. I'll just get rid of that too. We have some weird seams here. We're going to fix those. I'm going to keep this because it's part of the inside of the back leg. Now, when I put this in game, it's going to look really, really bad. Like, just really bad. But I just want to get an idea of if it's remotely correct in where the stripes should be. It should be pretty close, but I always just want to check it. So, alright, so that looks terrible. Going to export, and then do a quick export as PNG. And I'm going to actually export this 3 times. So first up, click on the 00 marking layer or marking file, copies the name down there, just hit save. Yes, we're replacing it. And then, because I want to override the random mask, I'm just going to save it 2 more times. Quick export as PNG, and 1 more time. Now, open the Cobra tools. Open our Malayan tiger. Go into the animal OVLs, find the male. That's the one we're working on. Then, I'm just going to drag these 3 files in to inject them. And then save. Not that one. Really don't want to save my Malayan tiger data over my Sumatran tiger. That would be a lot of work to undo that. Okay, so we'll save it over the correct OVL, close the tools, and then we hop into Planet Zoo and take a look at it. And as the game loads in here, just going to pause the game. And did it work? Yeah, it worked. Okay, yeah. Did it? Yeah. Okay. I mean, did I save the correct OVL? Because that doesn't look terrible. Oh yeah, no, it's definitely the right one. You can see here on the back legs, got some weird dark areas, we got some weird seams, but damn, that's not bad. Okay, so that's not actually a bad projection map. He's a little bit darker than he was before because we have that gray tone in there, which is darkening him up a little bit. We're actually going to get rid of that and darken up the whole tiger file just a little bit as a comparison. Are you okay? You're also a male. Where's a female? Okay, I have way too many tigers in here. You are a Bengal tiger. You are you are the female. So as you can see, this is our comparison right now. It's the unedited female. I haven't touched the model, haven't touched the texture. We compare these two, you can already see the difference. Already a much better thing. Now, you can see there's some kind of weirdness happening right here. If I have him selected and then I zoom out, there's a really good, that's good right there. This is a LOD problem. So one of the LODs, I think it's either LOD 1 or LOD 2, because it goes away as you zoom out, it comes back as you zoom in, has something wrong with it. So I need to go back into Blender and figure that out. I think it's a weight painting issue. Once I identify it, I'll go over how to get rid of it. And you can see it's happening on that one as well. But, so we already have a much better stripe pattern for the tiger. We need to fix the hip a little bit because it got kind of broken when we were projecting it. That's why you don't just do a projection map and stick it in the game. Sometimes it'll look fine, sometimes it looks weird. But it is better. It is much better than it was already. So I'm going to hop out of here, get back into Photoshop. I got to research what's wrong with the LODs before we go much further on that and figure it out. So you can see that this white area here was showing up as pure black in the game. This, a little bit of weirdness, and then this kind of gray that was darkening up the coat, and then the back texture wasn't quite meshing with the rest of it. So this doesn't look too bad. So I'm going to make myself another copy of that layer by Command J. Control J, it's Command if you're on a Mac. I learned Photoshop on a Mac, but I use a PC. So I'm going to do, I'm not going to start on the face. I never really start on the face. I'm just going to pick a random spot here and get started. And I'm just going to paint out each individual stripe, make it a little bit sharper, make it so that all the interior, all the textures kind of match together. I'm going to use symmetry. In this edition of Photoshop, we have a symmetry option, and it's wonderful. It really is. It's one of the best features. I'm going to use a vertical symmetry. And what happens now, let's zoom out just a little bit. If I start painting just some black here over here, you can see it does it on that side as well. Oh, that's wonderful. So this takes texturing, this will cut it in half, basically, the amount of time that I have to spend doing the texture, basically in half. So what I'm going to do at this point is actually just speed this up, because this is going to take a really long time. I mean, this will be several hours here in Photoshop, painting out all the gray stuff, just leaving the individual stripes. So I am going to do that, and then I'll bring you back into some real-time stuff when we're ready to test it again and see how it looks. So our Malayan tiger is starting to come together now. So you can see after all that work we've done in Photoshop, just cleaning up the edges of those stripes, they're looking a lot better. Still got some a little bit of weirdness here and there. Okay, the camera will behave. Got some stuff in here to kind of unify the back. Right now the stripes are kind of too hard edged and they're kind of blurry in places. So we're going to go in and fix that next. but I was just taking a look to see what they look like in game. Okay, I don't know what those two are doing over there. All right, but yeah, they are starting to look pretty darn good. Fixed the LOD issue that I was having on these guys. It was essentially start over and yeah, remake the model, which was fun, but yeah, so fix that. They're looking really sharp. So I'm gonna hop back into Photoshop now and take a look at the edge, fixing up the edges of these stripes, and then this guy is just, he's gonna be done pretty quick here. All right, so back in Photoshop. Next up, what I want to do is kind of fix up these kind of blurry areas that look a little bit weird. And to do that, I'm going to use an actual fur texture brush. So I highly recommend, if you're going to be doing a lot of texturing, you get yourself some fur brushes. I usually just go off of DeviantArt, seems to be a good spot to find them. Any place like that. They're easier to find for Photoshop than they are for GIMP, but you can find some good ones for GIMP as well. What I'm going to be doing is just going back and forth, swapping between black and white, and fixing these edges, kind of unifying these spots in, or these stripes in here so that they form, you know, cohesive markings, looking at some real Tiger reference, cleaning up areas like this, like this. The face has actually turned out pretty nice. I'm not going to do too much to it. I'll pop back in game to check and make sure that the this area where the cheeks kind of join the head aren't stretching weirdly or anything. But we are going to get this guy done here pretty quick. So what I'm using, this particular fur set has a nice kind of pointy end to it. I'm going to make the brush smaller. I've turned up the, using pen pressure for the opacity on it, but I've turned the opacity up quite a bit. So, and then what I'm doing is I'm just coming in and just kind of feathering out the edges here. So that way it's not such a hard-edged stripe and it actually looks like fur a little bit. I'm going to play around with different brushes. I had one, but I didn't save it exactly how I wanted it here. That looks pretty decent. Yeah, just go on DeviantArt. There's a few other places you can find Photoshop brushes. Obviously, be careful downloading anything off the internet onto your computer. Run a virus scan. You know, don't download something nasty just because you want some pretty brushes. But these fur brush will make it much easier to get a decent texture and to get something realistic and then also fits with the look of the game. Alright, so we are back and wanted to take a look at our Malayan tigers. So the male is finished and so is the female. So the female was the exact same steps as the male, just replicating that. With her, I chose not to record that part because, well, it would basically double the amount of time for the video. Actually, that's not entirely true with the female. We just copied over the stripe pattern and save that with just with the word female instead of male. So that works as well. So here she is. She's a nice looking cat. Got our custom stripe pattern done completely. Looks really good. Looks quite a bit better, at least in my opinion, than the default one. Just wanted to zoom out and make sure I don't have any LOD issues. Definitely like zoom out to the fullest extent and make sure none of your animals like blow up weird and do weird stuff or have weird polygons shoot off from them at certain levels. So we're good on that one. There's no issues there. So for a comparison, this is the default Bengal tiger. So quite a bit of an improvement. Not nearly so fat, much better, more realistic stripe pattern. I'm quite happy with these guys. I think at least the model and texture part is just about done. Now, I know I did say originally we were going to do the lock and UI stuff, all the Zupedia entry and all that in this episode. That is not going to happen because this video is already like 2.5 hours long or at least close to 2 hours. And yeah, I actually, that was with cutting out a bunch of stuff and just at one point I just forgot to hit record and didn't go back on it. So next episode, which we will finish this up, we will get our Zupedia image done here, get all of this text done, and the custom Zupedia map. So I'll be showing you how to do all of that. We'll also get our icons, our thumbnails, so that it no longer appears as a jaguar, but instead actually appears with a tiger thumbnail, and those will be custom thumbnails. So I'll show you how to do those. I don't use green screen. I don't see any point to it. You have to cut it out anyways. It's really not difficult to just, cut it out with the eraser tool in Photoshop. So that is the part 2 of creation of the Malayan tiger. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. If you've stuck with me this long, wow, props to you. I can't believe people listen to me talk this much. Yeah, if you've enjoyed this, found this helpful, please like the video. I do appreciate it. It helps me out, helps me grow the channel. Subscribe if you'd like to see more. Hit the bell notification if you'd like to be notified when I post a new video. Thank you guys for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one.